Hi, and thanks for joining. If you're new here, my name is Wendy, and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at places like garage sales, thrift stores, anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Today's video is going to be what sold for January 7th through 13th. Let's dive in. But before we get started, I just want to talk briefly about why we haven't been able to post videos as often as we have been in the past. In the past, we've always posted 2 videos a week. We usually do one what sold video, one sourcing video, or a video of some other variety other than what sold. And unfortunately, we had an unexpected death in the family. It was my husband's sister, so my sister-in-law. She passed away unexpectedly the week of Christmas. And she was the caretaker for my mother-in-law, Kevin's mom. So since my sister-in-law's passing, Kevin and I have taken over the responsibility of coordinating the living arrangements for Kevin's mom. She's currently staying with us while we determine what the next steps are for her. And it's just been a lot going on for us personally and trying to figure out all of the details that go along with that. So I just wanted to share that quick bit of information and explain why we haven't been able to post as often, because we've been busy dealing with that. You know, obviously personal things come up sometimes, and you definitely need to stop and focus on things like that. So I do apologize that our posting schedule has not been as consistent and as often as it has been. I will try to post as often as I can, but definitely for the next few months it may be affected. So thank you so much for understanding. But let's go ahead and dive into what sold. We have been selling a lot of things recently. We have had sales have been really good, and that's because we have been putting in a lot of work on our eBay store. So the first thing that sold was one of the Maker's Mark bourbon whiskey bandanas. This was one of the ones that we got from the Goodwill bins. We paid $1.18 for it, and it sold for $8.48, and that was a best offer. Next up was a lot of 3 card games. We had found all of them at the Goodwill bins, but I think we found them at 2 or 3 different times. So it included a brand new package of just oversized jumbo playing cards, then a brand new package of an Uno game, and then also a Phase 10 game. And we had paid in total $2.86 for these, and they sold for $19 even on best offer. And they actually went to Australia through the international shipping program. Next up was a 5.5-inch ceramic heart-shaped candy dish. This was actually mine. It was gifted to me a long time ago. I didn't use it anymore, so I decided to sell it, and that sold for $17.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was a brand new in package vitamin C serum by the brand Butte. It was brand new in the package. You cannot sell used beauty products on eBay, so don't do it. I got this at a garage sale for $2, and this sold for $59.99, so that was a really good sale. Next up was the brand was called Spectrum 58, and these were reusable Dallas Cowboys hand warmers, so you could put them in your pocket, and they had one of those little clicky things inside. I don't know what you call those, and then you would click them and then they would heat up, the little gel pack things. I got these at the Fill a Trash Bag garage sale, where we got like so many random things, and I just picked up anything that I thought had any potential value. This is not something I would typically pick up, but since we were getting such cheap prices at this sale, I decided to give it a whirl. So paid 33 cents for these, and they sold for $12.99. Next up was a 19-inch Disney Store plush stuffed velour classic Mickey Mouse doll. We got this at a garage sale for $2, and it sold for $19.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was a diamond multimedia 4K USB to HDMI display port adapter. We got this at a garage sale for $5, and it sold for $39.99. Next up was 2 Jeep Cherokee remote control keyless entry key fobs. They were very used and worn. You see I have the word worn right in the title. We got these out of that recent storage unit that we got. We had paid $1.16 for each of the items out of that unit. I did this as an auction starting at 99 cents, and then we did plus calculated shipping on this. So the buyer was all in with shipping and the cost of the auction for $6.69. Okay, next up was a 2013 Mattel Ever After High First Wave Royals and Rebels Apple White doll. These are like Monster High dolls, but they are, I don't know if I'm going to remember this right, but it's something like the daughters or the children of fairy tale characters. So Apple White would be like the child of Snow White. Don't quote me on that. That might be wrong, but I think it's something like that. We got this doll at the thrift store for $1, and it sold for $16.48 on offer to buyer. Next up was a Build-A-Bear Workshop tank top. I got this out of a big buy on Facebook Marketplace of all doll stuff, and there were a few Build-A-Bear items in there. So I paid 67 cents for this, and it sold for $8.78 on offer to buyer. Next up was another item from that storage unit. This was a 3-piece lot of Carnival Cruise Line's souvenir items. It included a medallion, a whale tail cup, and a fish cup. And I knew that those fish cups sell. I don't remember where I knew that from, but I knew that those sold. So I just had grabbed all the Carnival stuff and thrown it together in a lot. That we had paid $1.16 for, and that sold immediately for $25.48 on offer to buyer. Next up was a lot of 3 local DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, R&B rap artist CDs. Those also came from that storage unit. So we paid $1.16 for these, and these sold for $11 even, and that was a best offer. Next up was a 1987 Garbage Pail Kids card. This was a Series 10 trading card called Itchy Mitch. And I actually bought that off of Mercari with money earned from my affiliate link. So anybody who has used my affiliate link in the past, thank you so much. That really actually does help my business, so I really appreciate it when you guys do use those affiliate links. And if you are interested in selling on Mercari, there is an affiliate link in the description box below that will give you $10 off your first purchase and an additional $20 when you sell $100 in items. So you'll get a total of $30 potentially from Mercari with that affiliate link, and I can also earn money when you use that link as well. So it works out great for both of us, and I really do appreciate it. Anytime you guys use any of my affiliate links or support my channel in any way, it helps us out a lot. All right, moving on. The next item on the list was 3 vintage 2007 McDonald's hologram collectible sports cups tumblers. These came from a local thrift store. I paid $3 for these, and they sold for $15 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage Norelco electric shaver, speed shaver, case only. We got this at the Goodwill bins. We paid 94 cents for it. The buyer was all in for $9.93. It sold for, I don't remember how much it sold for, but it was like a price plus shipping. And we've been doing that a little bit recently on some items that we're relisting. I'm going to talk about that more in our next what sold video, so stay tuned for that and find out why we've been doing that some. But this is one of the items that we did list this way. Okay, next up was a Craftsman cordless drill driver manual only. This we got in the Goodwill bins. We paid 67 cents for it, and it sold for $9.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was a 2005 Leonard The Core Elite Ogre Axel Bras action figure. We got this at a thrift store in a bag of toys. It was 22 cents, and it sold for $7.25. Next up was a pair of Dickies men's bib overalls. We got these at a garage sale for $1, and they sold for $25. This is the second time we've sold them. The first time we sold them, they came back due to a size issue, or a fit issue, so we did relist them, and that did affect our profit somewhat because we did have to pay shipping on those twice. Next up was a 2016 Fisher-Price Little People American Airlines pilot figure. We found this in the Goodwill bins for 67 cents and it sold for $7.48. Next up was a Simplicity sewing pattern. It was uncut. We got this at a garage sale for 50 cents and it sold for $7.04, and I think that was a price plus shipping for the buyer. Next up was a Shannon Crystal clear glass lidded duck decoy candy dish bowl. Even if it's not like technically a duck decoy, if it's shaped like a duck, I always put the word decoy in the title because sometimes people are searching for duck items with that keyword. I've just found that that helps duck shaped items sell. So just a little tip there. We got this at a church rummage sale for $3.25 and it sold for $35.99. Next up was a pair of O'Neill men's black plaid casual Bermuda skate shorts. We found these at the Goodwill bins for 61 cents and they sold for $15 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage 1967 Nestor's New York, A Great City illustrated booklet, map, and guide. This came from an estate sale for 50 cents and it sold for $16.99. Next up was another one of the Maker's Mark whiskey bandanas. This came from the Goodwill bins for $1.18 and it sold for $7.48. Next up was a 2-pack of latex pacifiers. They were brand new in the package. These came from that storage unit. Each of the items from that unit were $1.16 and these pacifiers sold for $12.99. Next up was a book called Old Fishing Lures and Tackle No. 3 by Carl F. Lucky. We got this at that antique store when we went sourcing with the Cha-Ching King, Scott Kelly. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it in the description box below. I got 2 copies of this book at that store. I picked it up because it had a really good sell-through rate and I knew it would sell fast. And it did sell fast. We had paid $1 for this and it sold for $16.99. Next up was a Sony Stereo Mini Lavalier lapel mic. We got this out of the storage unit for $1.16 and it sold for $10.50. Next up was a Woolrich women's medium cotton long sleeve peasant blouse. We got this at a thrift store for $1.89 and it sold for $19.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was a lot of 19 decorative artificial faux apples. And I have the word decorative in there twice, and you know how much that bugs me. That is such a waste of keywords. We got this at an estate sale for $1.25 and it sold for $19.98 also. Next up was a Far Side paperback book called Cows of Our Planet. This came from a thrift store and we had paid $1.03 and it sold for only $7.98, so not a lot on that one. Next up was a Realistic brand cordless cassette head cleaner and demagnetizer. We got this at the thrift store for 27 cents and it sold for $10 even. Next up was one of the Francoma pieces. This was a salt shaker, just the salt shaker only. We got this at a garage sale for 75 cents and it sold for $15.29. Next up was a 1995 Score Baseball Cal Ripken Jr. card. This came from Kevin's collection and it sold for $5.99. Next up was a Fig and Flower from Anthropologie medium floral boho peasant top. We got this at a thrift store for $2.16 and it sold for $18.68 on offer to buyer. Next up was a pair of L'Amour Toddler Girls Hot Pink Suede boots. We got this from that big bulk buy of kids' shoes that we made. It was like a liquidation purchase that we made from a local kids' shoe store. We had paid $9.11 for each of the pairs of shoes, and this pair sold for $29.74. Next up was a VHS called Maurice Sendak's Really Rosie. and it featured the voice of Carole King. We tested it and it worked. This is a hard to find VHS and it's worth a little something, so if you ever see it, definitely worth picking up. We paid 24 cents for this at a thrift store and it sold for $33. Next up was a lot of 4 Red Heart Mystic acrylic alpaca worsted grape colored yarn, new in the package. We got this at a garage sale for $3 and it sold for $24.99. Next up was more of the Francoma pottery. This was a lot of 5 coffee mugs. These we paid 75 cents for and they sold for $43.18. Next up was a linen store beige micro suede chair slip cover, new in the package. This was gifted to us by a family member to sell. We had no cost and it sold for $21.59. Next up was an Emerald Lagasse 14 slot knife block. This was actually my old knife block. I switched to the in drawer kind, so I still have the knives, so this was just part of that set. And this sold for $22 even. Next up was something that came from that storage unit. When we did that storage unit, there were 2 big bins of jewelry and we didn't actually go through them. We just sold them as big bulk lots. This was the first one that sold. We sold it as a 14-pound scrap junk jewelry lot, unsearched. We had paid $1.16 for each of the listings from that storage unit, and this lot sold for $45 total. We did list it as an auction, and that's how much it ended for. So that wraps up everything for this particular week. Let's go over all of the totals. This week we sold 41 items for an average sale price of $20.59. Our sales totaled $764.88 for a net profit of $356. Thanks again for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let us and YouTube know by hitting the like button. And if you're not already subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button with the notification bell on so you can be kept informed of all of our latest content. Thanks again for joining, and we will catch you on the flip side.